Hey guys, how are you? Sorry, I was checking my computer trying to do a few things at the same time. We've got a few minutes before we're going to get started. Alex is logging on and checking in. Make sure she got it right. She did. So I think we're going to be okay there. And I'm just working on stuff with my computer here on the other screen. And here comes Alex. Awesome. Should be joining me any minute. We've got about 4 minutes before we have to start. So Alex and I may just hang out and talk as she comes on board, because I know we say 3 o'clock and I don't want to jump ahead too early there. Hope everyone's doing great. Interview process is what we're going to talk about today. And so please, as always, be interactive. Hey, Bo, what's happening? As Alex comes on board, just be certainly be interactive and ask questions. And one thing that I think is really important, I'm getting some things set up here on my end. One of the things that I think is really important is that when you talk to Alex today, or when we're talking to her, know that she works on both sides of the hiring equation. So she works with people who are looking for a job, and then she also works with people who are looking to hire. So while I think we spent a lot of time focused on the hiring, on the employee side. Not sure what happened there with Alex. Sorry, guys. Hold on one second. Make sure she's on board. I'll have her try that again. Hey, Alex, if you're watching this, just give that another shot. See what happens. We'll try it again. Anyway, know that Alex can talk about both sides of things. We tend to talk more about the consumer side, if you will, and less the company side. Just seems to be a topic that more people are interested in learning about. However, if you are running a business, if you are running an organization or a department, and that type of thing is important to you, let's make sure we address it. Okay. So there's that. And I've got yet another request coming in from Alex again. Okay, we'll try it one more time. There we go. I think this will work this time. We're still a good few minutes ahead of our scheduled time.
All right.
There's my favorite. No worries.
Hey.
You know, Alex, before we get started, I don't know if you like a nice warm cup of tea when you have your presentations. But
I do. I had one last night.
I'm going to be so gratuitous with this shit. Isn't that terrible? Too bad it's first order.
I'll be expecting one in the mail soon.
I need your address.
I will send that to you, preferably offline.
I could just put it in the mail and see what happens.
You could.
By the way, you know what's funny? Before we get started, because we have a few more minutes here, I don't want to jump ahead of time because I know people are going in. So I got quite a few comments from people that I know are going to be joining. So I may want us to start a little bit after 3 o'clock Central.
Okay.
To let people kind of join in before we dive right into things.
No problem.
You know, it's funny. I was looking you up on Instagram to connect This Great Life with your stuff. You know how many Alex Bowdens there are on the planet?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is. There's a lot of us.
I'm not trying to be weird. Don't take it that way. I literally initially connected with a 14-year-old boy.
Oh.
Because I clicked on it because I can't see the image. It's so dang small on my phone. So I went, I don't know. I'm going to take a chance. I just started clicking away. And I get a message like, dude. And I went, oops, okay, I'm going to back off now.
Well, see, because I train companies on unconscious bias, I purposely use Alex so people don't know whether I'm a girl or a boy.
You know what's funny? My ex intentionally named our kids that way. So I have an Alex, a Nick, and a Sam. Totally right in the middle. So you have no idea if it's a boy or a girl.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
I like those names.
So here's the thing. I have a bit of a headache. Not that I should whine or complain. That's not why I'm drinking this fantastic tea and this wonderful moment. But I'm a little out of sorts. Anyway, I know more people are going to be joining because they mentioned that they would. So it's just now a minute after 3. So before we get fully started into what you're going to talk about, one of the things I was mentioning beforehand, and I don't know if you had a chance to hear it while we were trying to connect, was that I had a couple of questions from people who are on the hiring side. In fact, if you're watching on the right now, a good friend of mine, Bo, is online. He's an amazing guy, runs a business out of Florida. So he may be listening for different reasons too.
Okay.
today, as we start talking about interviewing and the questions that we would normally have to be prepared for as consumers, that person looking for the job, we may want to toggle back and forth between if you're on the other side of the fence, right? If you're asking employee questions. I'll be straight with you. I'm a little bit more comfortable on that side because I've hired a hell of a lot more people than I've been hired for positions. So it's something I feel comfortable talking about right now. Just be
Yeah.
prepared. That makes sense.
Okay, no problem. I'm
Okay.
happy to answer both. I'm going to turn up my light a little bit so you can actually see me.
Awesome. Okay. Why don't we do this? It's a couple minutes after. I still want to wait a little bit because I know people said they were going to join.
Okay.
And you have 3 o'clock there, 4 o'clock by you, right?
Yes.
You guys have snow, or you don't get much snow?
We're supposed to get it tomorrow. Oh, we do get snow.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, it just doesn't accumulate a lot. People still freak out though. Like
Okay.
if you get 1 to 2 inches of snow, people don't drive anywhere. It's random. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have it in Chicago. When we get snow, everyone just keeps driving 100 miles an hour. They don't care.
Yeah.
Super dangerous. And then last thing, hey, the Ohio State. See the college football?
Yes. I am.
You saw that they're ranked.
Yes, and I just taught my son the Go Bucks and the OHIO. It's really cute.
That's awful.
It's not awful because my friend taught him Go Blue, and I had to like circumvent that immediately.
No, Michigan?
Yeah.
Kill you.
So I was like, nope. I downloaded all the fight songs onto his baby playlist. I was like, we're getting this in now.
That's great.
I don't play.
I can't imagine anyone surviving in a household of Ohio State people with the Michigan fight song. This doesn't sound right.
I have quite a few friends that are from there.
That's too funny.
So.
All right, let's dive in. People get here, they get
Okay.
here. I'm confident they'll show up at some point, so let's get rolling here. We're talking today about interviews, and I know you also want to piggyback up with some things we did yesterday because we didn't quite finish. So as I always say, I'm going to step out right now, and this will be available to anyone to watch it later. You guys will know that. What we tend to do here, just to keep repeating the process, you and I will talk for a good 15, 20 minutes, and then we're opening it up for questions and answers and all that kind of stuff. So I'll let you continue where we were yesterday.
Yeah, great. And then I'll just chime in and say, if you guys have questions or comments along the way, if you like something you hear or it's a different take on anything that you've heard before, give a thumbs up or a like so we know that we're on the right track of giving the information you need. So for resumes, that's what I wanted to touch on today in addition to interviewing because we didn't get a chance to cover it too much last night. Resume, you want to be 1 to 2 pages max. And depending on what field you're applying to is going to change the aesthetic of the resume. So if you're in technical, construction, auto, legal, those are going to be more simple and straightforward resumes. Those are going to be your typical black and white, listing experience and skills and keeping it pretty basic, very quantitative, data driven, especially if you're involving technical software you're used to using. You want to put that all out there as well. Now, in any other field, you want to play with the aesthetics a little bit more because we're seeing resumes all the time, especially like marketing or advertising or anything that has any flair of creative. You definitely want to play with the aesthetic, make it a little more punchy. Don't be afraid of colors. Don't be afraid of graphics. Don't let it get too overboard. A program I love to use is Canva. They have great templates where you can look really professional and just stand out from the crowd a little bit more easily. So take aesthetics into account in those types of fields. Now, the bullets should be in situation, action, result format. And this is the biggest change that's happened over the last several years is that we're becoming extremely data driven. So whereas most of the technical resumes were much more data driven and all the other resumes were much more talking about like soft skills and responsibilities and things that you had, now people want to see the data. And what we're finding is that people overestimate their skill set quite a bit. So from a hiring manager perspective, you want to know that somebody's actually accomplished what they're saying they've accomplished. And we'll tie that into the interview piece too. But if you're putting it in situation, action, result format, you want to include data, quantifiable data wherever possible. So that's going to mean this was the context, this is the steps that I took or the skills that I leveraged, and we gained 30 million in profitability, or we reduced cycle times by 15%, right? You're going to add that data in and tie it in wherever you can so that it shows the impact that you actually made on the organization as a whole.
Could you explain situation, actions, results again for me?
Yeah. So situation is like the context. So for example, I could say tasked with reducing, I'm trying to think off the spot here, tasked with like reducing cycle time for existing something process, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Collaborated with cross-functional teams, found a new program and implemented it within 3 months, reduced cycle time by 30%.
Okay.
So you want to give us the situation, what action steps you took, and what the end result was. And you're going to do that in interview as well.
Okay.
So jumping into cover letters, something I want to touch on briefly is a cover letter is a personal statement connecting you to the work, the company, the culture, or the job. It is not a reiteration of your resume. So if you start talking about all the skills that you have and why you're a great fit for the job in your cover letter, as a hiring manager, we zone out. It's just redundant information. It doesn't matter. It's an extra piece of paper. If it's a whole page of giant paragraphs, again, same thing as your resume. Too text heavy, I'm not going to read it. I've got a million that I have to go through, and I don't want to sit there reading paragraphs and paragraphs of information. Make it clean, bullet it out, make it clear. For a cover letter, I recommend 3 paragraphs, and that's it. Sweet and to the point. The first paragraph should talk about what it is that draws you into the company. What is about their culture, their mission, their values, their work, maybe their community engagement. Show that you've done your research and you're truly connected to their mission. The next is your paragraph calling out what about you particularly is special in connecting to those things, whether it's experience you had or a passion project you've done that ties in really well. This is your chance to talk about something unique. It's also your chance to talk about things that might come up as red flags from reading your resume. So that could be employment gaps. That could be relocation. If you look like a job hopper because maybe you followed your partner around state to state for his or her job. Those are things you want to use the cover letter to call out so people aren't jumping to negative assumptions. And then the last paragraph is just like wrapping it up and tying it with a bow. I'm so excited to learn more. I can't wait to meet you for an interview and talk further about what skills I have that best suit your job. Now, interviewing. You have to prepare. Preparing is so important. If you don't prepare, you're relying on what comes out in the moment. And the reality is when we have a long work history, even several years of work history, right? You're at work every day. You're churning and burning and you're accomplishing all these things. And we forget. We forget what we've done. We forget what we've accomplished. We forget the details surrounding it. A lot of times, if you've got, 5 to 10 years under your belt, you've accomplished a lot. And so you have to take time to reflect on what are those key accomplishments and examples that you can provide in an interview that are going to be most impactful to your story and your brand. They're going to showcase who you are as an employee. And we want details. From a hiring manager's perspective, you always need to be asking behavioral-based questions. If you're not asking behavioral-based questions, you're not learning anything in the interview. Now, what is a behavioral-based question? Behavioral-based question is, tell me about a time when. What's the difference? Okay. Tell me about a time when requires someone to recall a specific scenario in which they displayed a behavior and what the result was. It's not hypothetical. It's not them catering the response to what they think you want to hear. They actually have to come up with a response of what they've done. And the greatest predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if you're not asking behavioral-based questions, you need to start doing that right away. You can Google them, you can look them up, you can contact me and I can give you some sample ones that I drill with my clients who are on the other side of the interviewing table, but that needs to happen. Now, good companies or companies that are more knowledgeable in the area of hiring will be asking you. So if you're the job seeker, you need to be able to respond to that. So going back to what I said, you have to have those details prepared. There are sample interview questions that you can pull off the internet that are your typical interview questions. None of the crazy ones about, if you were a type of butterfly, what butterfly would you be? Like, please don't ask your people those questions. That's like a whole liability issue. It's not related to the job. It's very subjective. If you're asked that type of question, think twice before you accept that job offer. So those need to go out the door. Be prepared to respond in situation, action, result format. So, my boss asked me to revamp this project around employee engagement. And so I pulled together all the different teams that impacted employee engagement. I ran some data analysis through a program. I put together an engagement survey. I deployed it. And here's what we found, and here are the next steps that we took. Right? That would be a solid answer showcasing what I've done previously, tying it into the question. So if you're not preparing those responses ahead of time, you're not going to be able to answer those very thoroughly.
Is that something that you think hiring managers, you and I have talked a lot about this. And again, for people that are new to watching this, Alex and I met probably a year and a half ago. And I don't say this with some sort of bravado. I know I challenged you early on in a lot of your own thinking and philosophies because I have my own beliefs on things. One of the things that I did when I was starting to do my job search, the executive search that you were helping me with, was actually go on executive search sites, places like your company, to figure out what questions you typically all asked. And then I just mapped that out. Well, they're likely going to ask me this, that, and the other. Are some of the things you're talking about very standard questions? So people should be, not only are you advising people to ask questions on behavioral based things, but people should be prepared to hear those types of questions on that other side of the table, right?
Absolutely.
So that's really the preparedness you're talking about, getting comfortable with being able to talk and tell the story of the reasons behind your actions, your choices, et cetera, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You are telling your story, you're tying into your personal brand, which brings us to the next point, which is your personal value proposition. And Jack, you and I did some work on this too. I don't know that we ever finished, but we did some work on it.
You're killing me.
I'm just calling you out all over the place.
Totally deserved and owned. Go ahead.
No, I mean, you diverted to start this, so it was a very noteworthy
You're
distraction.
Punch in the gut is always good.
So what is it and how do you develop it? A personal value proposition is your personal brand. It's your why, it's your special sauce, as I call it. It's what makes you special and unique and stand out from the crowd. What do you bring to the table that is not easily replicated? So this is a much grander question than what are your strengths, right? Similar strengths tie into this, but if I'm asked in an interview, what are your strengths? I might say things that are much more boiled down, like I have a strong work ethic, or I'm highly organized and detail oriented. Not, by the way, but I might say that. I'm really good at advanced Excel. I might use like very key things that I can tie into what's needed for the job. But when I talk about my personal value proposition, like what is the essence of me? What is my brand? If I'm talking about that, I'm talking a much bigger pillars. I'm talking about the fact that, and I mentioned this when I talked about my actual strengths, the fact that I'm able to identify unique qualities in each person and pull them out and motivate them to be their best. Like I'm passionate about the things that I do, and when I take them, I don't take things on lightly. When I do it with like 150% vigor, right? Like be able to talk about things with confidence that if you were to ask 10 people that knew you really well, probably 7 out of 10 would identify very similar things across the board because it's just you. It's who you are. And that's what you want to be able to bring to the table and state confidently as an employee and give them a sense of who it is, who's your character that they're hiring. One
of the questions that I was reading in preparation for this, and I think I sent it to you as an FYI that I stumbled across, was the questions be prepared to answer it in an interview or something like that. And one of them was, tell me about yourself.
Yes.
With that very open, and okay, this is just, let me sidebar for a second here. When I hear that, you can imagine my answer is, what do you want to know?
Yeah.
Right? Do you want to know about my personal? Right, because
Yeah.
and maybe that comes with age, right? That I'm at a certain age where if you're going to ask me about myself, there's a lot of parts we could talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I liked though in the article, and I think what you're getting at here too, is that what I found interesting in the article is that employers will ask the question just to kind of to see where your brain's going to go.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone enjoys how much I'm liking this conversation with Alex because I'm sometimes forgetting that we're actually talking to other people. Again, if you guys are all listening well, she said at the very beginning of this meeting, be prepared. That's going to set you up for success in an interview. If you read earlier what I wrote in the post, it's like, don't be afraid of an interviews. If you have yourself prepared, they're fine. And so if that question comes up, which seems like a very common question, tell me about yourself. If I'm hearing you correctly, am I stealing your thunder, woman? Yeah, am I
No,
doing
no,
that?
no. You're tying it. You're tying it
That
at the bow. That's exactly right.
that this the brand piece that you're talking about, this thing that I didn't finish, is the way for you to start saying, well, let me tell you about myself. I'm passionate about this. Right? Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
That's all. Okay.
Yes, because in
Okay.
reality, when we talk about these pillars of your character, right, it should carry over into personal as well. You can ask people professionally, you can ask people personally, and they should all say very similar things about you,
Yeah.
because you might change a little bit in a work environment. You might have a work style and who you are at home, but the essence of your character doesn't change. So
Right. Right.
those should be the same. Another question that you could answer that with is, why should we hire you? Right? And if you're going for like a higher
Right.
level leadership position,
Right.
that's more often going to come up. If you're going for entry level position, I mean, sometimes they ask that, sometimes they don't. The tell me about yourself is a great opportunity to sell yourself using your value proposition. But the
Right.
why should we hire you? If I'm hiring a leader, there's a lot of data around leaders coming in from the outside having a harder time being successful and blending with the culture. So I'm going to want to know that, the character of this person matches what I'm breeding within my culture. And that's a great opportunity to confidently sell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So for people that are really uncomfortable in this type of pressure scenario, maybe at home when you're practicing, you're preparing, you're doing all those things, but you get in there and you're a basket case, right? Or maybe you're not naturally confident. That's okay. There's different strategies you can use so that you're prepared and feel confident and radiate that confidence walking in an interview. And this is more of the mindfulness and mental practice that I talk about with my clients, and you touch on too.
Mm-hmm.
And big one is meditation. And I was never a fan of meditation. It always seemed cool. I never did it until I started my business. And I was starting my business and I was at home part-time raising my son, and we had just bought a house, and I'm running a salsa team with my husband, and I was just so overwhelmed. I didn't feel like I was giving anything 100%. And I started doing meditation. And we talked last night about even the visualization exercise and what they
Yep.
did for my business.
Yep.
But it centered me so much and allowed me to be really clear and calm and focused. And I actually created a meditation that I send my clients before they go for an interview, specifically about visualizing how they're going to do in the interview. There's a lot of programs out there that offer free meditation, but this is something that's simple enough to build into your daily practice that's going to help you feel centered and grounded and confident and clear-minded walking into an interview.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing you want to practice is like confidence and affirmations. Think about the most proud achievement you've ever accomplished. This is another exercise I give my clients, right? Shoulders out, chest open. Think about the most proud thing you've ever achieved. And that pride starts to radiate up, and that confidence starts to radiate out if you start talking about what it is that you've achieved you're so very much proud of.
Yep.
That's the type of energy you want to tap into and bring into an interview. So if you do that right before walking into the room, just thinking through it, you're going to feel that natural confidence, whether you're a confident person or not. All of this stuff should be morning of preparation. You do not want to be rushing to an interview. You do not want to be figuring out what you're going to wear the morning of. Trust me, I know I'm the queen of like last minute, but I don't mess with interviews. Like I prepare well ahead of time, and it makes me feel much more calm, much more confident, and at ease. So take time for yourself, the day of, the morning of, if you can. Take an hour to do whatever relaxes you and makes you feel centered. That's outside of getting dressed, doing your hair, putting makeup on if you're, a female, and commuting to the job interview. Now, selling yourself. A lot of where people get tripped up in an interview is selling yourself. They feel like they have to go in and do all the talking and all the selling. So I had a client, she's very good at selling herself. She talks a lot. She's great at what she does, but she spent a year getting a ton of interviews because she's a fantastic networker and not a single job offer. And she was one of those people, like, I was giving her advice and she wouldn't take it. And I give her advice and she wouldn't take it. And eventually I just was really blunt with her and I said, Susan, we've been working on this for over a year and you're not getting the interviews. Something's happening in the interview. You need to sit down with me, make the time, and let's do interview coaching. And sure enough, she was coming in with this like intense energy of selling herself and talking. She wasn't doing any listening. She wasn't adapting her responses to what it was that they were looking for and they needed. And in reality, selling is a two-way street. To be able to sell effectively, you need to know who you're selling to. And you need to be able to alter that messaging. So listen for what it is that their biggest challenges and pain points are, and sell and talk to what it is that you have in your back pocket that is going to help them be effective in those areas. That is much more effective than just coming in with a bravado, trying to sell that's overly pushy, and people don't feel like they're actually learning anything about you.
I'm laughing because I have to interject. You said last night that you draw comparisons to dating and relationships.
Yes.
And you made me think of, and I hope I'm not embarrassing any friends that are on here because most people know that I'm in a great committed relationship, but prior to that was certainly dating quite a bit. And I used to always find it funny when I would almost at the end of the night count how many words I actually said. Like, how many times did people ask me, so tell me about yourself, tell me what you do. Because I was curious to see if they're as good of a talker as they are a listener. So I always found that it highly exciting on the dating side because I always felt there was a better connection when they'd say, well, tell me about your kids, or tell me about your life, or tell me about your family. And two things that you just said, and I'm going to keep tying bows here if you're cool with that analogy.
Yeah.
You brought up meditation. You know I'm all about mindset. You know I'm all about having visualization, everything like that. I want to carry on what you said. In the interview, you're still meditating. And that may sound corny, but the moment you get done talking, here's a weird, super ass weird example. You know that I make presentations in public. I was in Washington, D.C. ago, so I'm supposed to talk. I reminded myself of this mantra that I have 4, 7, 8 that I use all the time. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. So the moment I got done talking and said things like, does that make sense? That was my time to breathe, to gather my thoughts for the next thing. I think that applies to the interview as well. And you tell me if I'm all wet because you know I trust you.
Yeah,
After you
absolutely.
answer a question, stop, breathe, slow it down, review that meditation stuff. Meditation doesn't mean doing Om and this kind of, doesn't have to be that stereotype. So that's why I love tying all this together. I hope you're cool with that.
Yes.
Because that's really a part of it. And maybe, so finish telling your story about Susan. I'm curious to see if she listened to you.
She did. And she got
slowed down.
offers.
She did.
She slowed down.
Yep.
And she messaged me. She was like, it worked. So
Yep.
she started getting all these offers. Yep.
As
and
a
it's
hiring
true.
manager, since you're on the other side of it, what would someone like Susan come off across as to the hiring manager? It's probably patently obvious to everyone here, but you deal with it directly. You've worked on that side. What would be your gut reaction of what that person is? You started earlier talking about you're looking for behaviors. And so while we don't know anybody, right, and we make initial impressions right away, what would be your gut reaction if you were to hire someone like Susan? And the reason probably she got rejected.
That they dominate the conversation. They don't know how to listen and take direction, that they just go. They just go.
That'd be your gut, right? That'd be your gut reaction is this is going to be a hard person to talk to.
Yeah. Is she going to take feedback? Is she going to take direction? Or is she just going to do what she wants to do? And she's a strong personality and could be difficult to work with.
Yeah, because you're going to talk on this topic of feedback and criticism and giving and exchanging later on this week. So It's amazing how your brain would jump to, okay, I can't get a word in edgewise with this woman. What's that going to do later on in the career?
Yes. And
Okay.
in reality, and this is for the hiring manager side too, interviewing should be a conversation.
Right.
You should have follow-up questions always. And for the interviewee, again, as you said, Jack, like take a moment to breathe. Let people give follow-up questions. You should be thorough in your response, but allow something for people to ask you about, right? Because when we develop that rapport in an interview, and this is getting into the bias side, right? Like when we connect, it actually ends up biasing the interview in your favor. We tend to hire people that we feel more connected to. It's totally unrelated to whether they're going to be good or not. So if you're hiring
Right.
manager, like, just so you know,
Right.
don't do that. But
Right.
if for an interviewee, like most people do, most hiring managers do, we're human, and most hiring managers are very unaware of the biases that impact hiring.
Right.
So leverage it and allow people to connect. You know, it doesn't mean go into like your personal stories about everything that happened with your boyfriend that weekend and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But like allow it to be a conversation so you can actually connect.
Right. Right. Okay. I'll let you continue. Thank you.
Yeah. So the second to last thing I just want to touch on real quick is asking great questions. I touched on this. I work with a university here, Northern Kentucky University, and I coach their students in the marketing department. And I brought this up and I had a lot of people like freeze when they said it. I said, you should never leave an interview without asking questions. And I did not know that when I was just entering the workforce. I did not know that at all. Before I got into interviewing and hiring, I was doing it all wrong because my mindset was, hey, if I don't have any questions, then it looks like I'm really competent and I'm confident. And the reality, if I didn't have any questions, people are like, you're not engaged in the interview. You have no questions for me, really? Like you have nothing to ask? Right. Then you're not being proactive about your job search. Right. So from a hiring manager's perspective, you need to ask questions. And a question you always want to start with, and I tell this, I have like key questions that I always have my clients ask. One you always want to start with, I'll give you a little tidbit, is what concerns do you have about me being the best fit for this role? And the logic behind that being your first question is that you have time to speak to the things that they're concerned about with you. The red flags that came up in the conversation, if you said something and they were like, for example, in my previous company, we were a marketing firm, but we did project management. And so we would get a ton of candidates that were interested in more of the creative and strategic. And so if people mentioned creative and strategic throughout the interview, red flag would go up. And we'd be like, ooh, is that really what they want instead of execution? And so this question allows you, the interviewer, to say, hey, you know, you did mention creative and strategic sometimes. I'm concerned that this is not going to be the right fit for you because we don't do a lot of that work here. So and then you can say,
so I'm sorry. So you've been on that side. Have you heard that question then, being on the hiring side? And in hearing it, that I love the question. I'm telling you, I think it's awesome.
I've actually never had anyone ask me that question as an interviewer, but I encourage my clients to ask it because I know
that really puts the interviewer, yes, right in the spot of vulnerability. Like me or don't like me, let me know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool
and what I used to do is I used to address those red flags and coach my hiring managers to address those red flags before leaving the interview. But a lot of them don't. And so if you're the interviewee, you need to make them address it. Okay? Because we make a lot of assumptions in conversations. Maybe you word something a certain way and the candidate could say to you, you know, I came from a creative and strategic background, but what I find that I'm actually most passionate about is the execution portion. I just like being amidst creativity, right? Yep. Okay, that's a perfectly understandable response. And I wouldn't have known that if they hadn't asked me or put me on the spot to say, yeah, that was kind of concerning to me because that's not what this role entails.
Very cool.
Always start off with that. If you run out of time for questions, always start with that one so you can address those things first and you have the power and the last say leaving the room.
Very cool.
Okay. Last thing, very simple, is just sending thank you letters. I'm surprised how many people actually don't think to do this. So always send a thank you letter. if you don't have the name of the people that you interviewed with or their email, reach out to the recruiter, reach out to whoever scheduled you for the interview and ask for it. Personalize it whenever possible. And don't just relist your skills. Don't just say, Debbie, it was so nice to meet with you. Just a reminder, I'm great at XYZ and I would be a perfect fit for your role. That doesn't do anything for me. You might as well not have sent one, right? So, I mean, send one anyway, but, but use it as a chance to connect. If you connected on the fact that you're both really passionate about horses, whatever, or the fact that you're really excited to tackle their engagement challenges and you're being hired in HR and that's a specialty of yours. Hey, you know, when you mentioned the engagement challenges you were having with my background and my passion being focused in those areas, I'm just really excited to get to know those challenges more and come in and be able to tackle those things right away. Like be able to connect to things that you actually talked about so that you're memorable instead of just like the cover letter, relisting your skill set. Mm-hmm. That's that.
You rock. So I have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
And this is more a level question, right? So you tell me if this is a wrong thing to do when you're about to be hired, because I do this. Alex is never going to work with me moving forward. Not as the hiring manager, but someone that's about to be hired.
Okay.
And typically I had looked at C-level positions for sure. And I know those processes take longer. And there was an opportunity I had about 4 years ago. And it ultimately didn't work out because we couldn't agree to a compensation package. So that's just a detail there. But one of the things that I did that made them kind of shocked was that I knew there was a guy that was going to report to me that was a vice president. So I was a C-level, the chief operating officer opportunity. And there was a vice president in a different division that would have a somewhat dotted line to me, but he had been an original employee of the company. This company had grown from a startup to 200 plus employees. And I just sensed something about him that was not friendly. And I wanted, in the role that I was going to have, I was going to be largely overseeing culture of a customer service unit. And I wanted to, I saw some things that they wanted me to come in to shift that culture. Mm-hmm. So I asked if I could take him out to lunch. I wanted to see him at lunch, and everyone on the phone's gonna be like, Jesus, what a jackass. I specifically told the wait staff to be slow. I specifically asked the wait staff, I said, I'm going to tip you high for this, but I need you to mess up orders. I need you to be slow, because I wanted to see what his gut reaction was going to be to stress. So I was trying to create an environment. Maybe it sounds bad because I had a gut feeling that there was something about him, and I didn't know how to ask the question because he was a pretty slick communicator. Stress happens sometimes. You got to roll with the punches. You know, one of those speech guys. Within 5 minutes, he was turning his head going, is there a reason why it takes so long to get water? To the waiter. And I knew at that moment, I'm not going to work with this guy. Because I could feel that culture was going to be difficult. So what I did is I went back to the president of the company and said, I've got these concerns. And he said, you're not the only one that's talked about this before. And I said, well, I'm not telling you it's a him or me, but my question to you ultimately is, I was going for a higher level position for sure. Is that a shitty tactic?
No, I mean, you really went out of your way to frame that guy. But I mean, it's not shitty. It's smart in a way, you know, because you are kind of taking him out of his element to see what his true character is. And that worked for you. It was very insightful for you. And I know plenty of companies that will take their top candidates out to dinner and their partners for the same reason. They want to see how they treat the waitstaff. They want to see how they are outside of the interview room and get to know them better, see if they connect. Now, as someone who trains, like I said, on unconscious bias, I'm kind of 50-50 on those scenarios, because when you're taking someone outside the work environment to connect, a lot of times we rely on, like, do I get along with this person? And, you know, do we gel? Can we be friends? And none of those things are contingent upon them being good at their job.
Right.
So that is the challenge that I have with those scenarios, but it's not like unethical or illegal or a bad idea. You know, there's pros and cons to that type of scenario.
As a net result of it, what was interesting, the president of the company told me that I was spot on because he said he was an absolute overreactor. And then the president of the company, interestingly enough, twisted the conversation around and said, is that a deal breaker for you? And I remember saying, I said, I don't think so. As long as I understand that that's a pattern of behavior, my next question is, how amenable is he? Because I couldn't gather it from that whole process. How amenable is he, or how well does he listen to someone saying, hey, we got to change that? And they said, I think, President said, he goes, I believe you could have an effect on him. He goes, you just have to be aware it's going to be something you're going to have to be patient with. Mm-hmm. So I know it's a crazy ass tactic, and I know I drive you crazy with the way I look at things sometimes.
No, I'm not afraid of being challenged.
No, I know you're not. I think I worry that you'd be afraid of putting me out in front of somebody sometimes. Let me open it up to questions, because I know specifically there's someone here, Danielle is here, and she may be here with her staff. She had mentioned to me in a private message that she may be listening in on some things. So Danielle, if you do have questions, certainly open it up, type away, and we'll respond to them. I wish there was, I'm going to try, the next time we do this, we're going to do Zoom. I really mean it. We're going to get it so that people can actually talk and engage. Maybe we'll dive into more detail of certain things. And so if people have questions, please add them right now. Type them. Like Alexandra said at the beginning of this, if you like what you're hearing, not necessarily from me, from her, if you like what she has, right? If you like what she has to say, please share that with us so we know we're getting the right feedback from you. Like I can do this, so I don't know if the likes are popping up, but I hope they are. Yeah, just like that. So you may have seen them. So if there are questions, please ask away. If you have not reached out to Alex directly, you know that you can. She is far better at all this type of advice than I could ever imagine being. She certainly works with all types of levels. I think you would acknowledge that. You were going to work with my daughter before she landed her opportunity. My daughter's 24 years old. She found an entry-level marketing position out in Oregon, but I know she was about ready to work with you before she landed some stuff. So questions, ask away, because I'm going to sit here. I don't see anything popping up. Do you see any, Alex, on your end?
I don't, no.
Okay, let me just make sure I'm paying attention to it. Danielle, do you have any questions at all? And are you typing them and we're not getting them? Or are you just being quiet? Danielle, how about a hearts or thumbs up so I know you're hearing me? Something? And by the way, so you know, Alex, there's roughly a 7 to 8 second delay.
Got you.
From the time that you and I broadcast or talk to the time that we'll see something show up on the screen.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else you want to add while we're waiting for some questions?
No, I would just say that, like, when I speak to these things, I don't want anyone to feel embarrassed if there's the things that you've done before or you didn't know. A lot of this information is stuff that many people don't know. There's no shame in not knowing it. That's the goal of the coaching, is to, you know, give you some key tidbits of things that you can rectify and already change your ability to.
Yeah. I have a question now. What about, I don't know that it's always worked for me, but what about staging an interview, mock interview? Would you recommend those types of things too?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I do mock.
Did I lose you a little bit? Yeah, it looks like I lost you. Oh, right when you were about to say something cool. Lost the audio. You still there? Well, I'm going to hit some likes and loves then just to make sure everyone sees how to do this. Can't hear you anymore. Oh, we lost you. Did you get another call coming in? Well, if you have questions, ask them and I can answer for Alex and she can say yes or no. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, we seem to have lost Alex. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not sure what happened there. Yeah, we can't hear you. Yeah, I don't know what's happened. Hold on a second. Yeah, we lost Alex. Okay, listen. Yeah, I can't hear you. All right, so this is crashing and burning fast. So can you hear me? No. All right, we're going to wrap this up. So what I'd like anyone to do, Alex's name is always attached to everything that we're doing here. So please be sure to send her messages directly if you want to talk to her, ask her any questions. I encourage you to reach out to her. If you're looking to hire people, she's phenomenal at helping getting all that stuff set up. If you are looking for something yourself, she is amazing. She will walk you through a ton of processes. As you can see what we're doing all week long, she's great. Tomorrow, I think we're talking about resumes, I believe, I can't remember. And tomorrow is early in the morning. That's when we have to do this, is tomorrow morning. So with that, I'm going to say peace and rock on. Sorry that we had a technical issue, but I think we'll be able to hit things running tomorrow. Please ask away, ask comments and questions.